this week, do you want to do that again? Sorry. One of our production...
No, let's just roll with it. Let's go with it.
We're going with it. Hey, this week, everyone, doctors make the best rappers. 3 innovative security companies. DevOps will be a thing. Integrating products swimmingly, AI and machine learning in the hands of bad actors, and serverless security capabilities. Our topic segment today will discuss patching Intel vulnerabilities in the enterprise, all that and more, on this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The teleprompter now has artificial intelligence, Doug, and updates itself. It's awesome. This week, and talk about them as it relates to enterprise security. You're going to do great. we're gonna
I think that people think that you and I talk like every day at night. You know, It's like, hey, what are you doing? It's kind of a bit of an exhausting week. And I think that we noticed that a little bit in the stories for this week as well.
Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Minerva Labs stops malware that traditional antivirus solutions cannot block. Minerva works with your existing anti-malware tools to stop evasive threats by deceiving them into a dormant state, dramatically increasing your rate of prevention. Minerva's solution does not require ongoing care and feeding and will not get in the way of business users. With Minerva, adversaries have to pick their poison, implement evasive tactics and get caught by Minerva, or don't employ evasion and get stopped by AV. To learn more and request a demo, visit minerva-labs.com today. Welcome, everyone, to episode 74 of Enterprise Security Weekly for January 3rd, 2018. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined on the lines via Skype by none other than Mr. John Strand. Welcome, John.
I had something really witty to say, but it just sucks to be off vacation.
Yeah, huh? We're back in the grind. We're short a production person. It's got some tooth problems. I made sure all my employees had health insurance and stuff this year for just these reasons. Like, dude, get to a dentist. And I didn't realize this, John. I don't know if you've ever had tooth problems while you're traveling, but
yes.
Following all of our friends on Facebook that work in security, in the security community, in the security industry, that do a lot of travel, as many of us do, they're like, I'm somewhere and I really need a dentist. And everyone will comment, like, you can find an emergency dentist if it's in a reasonably populated area. Typically, there are dentists that are on call. So I'm like, dude, do that. It sucks.
Yeah, they're kind of sketchy, though. They show up with their little black bags. They don't want you to ask any questions. You can't look at them in the eye.
Have they come to your hotel room, John? Have you had, like, in-room?
Yeah.
Like, really? Like extraction?
Years ago at a SANS conference. They didn't do an extraction, but I had, like, a cavity that was painful, and they went right into it, and they drilled it out, and... It was like that scene in Batman, the first one with Jack Nicholson. It was a lot like that. A Little Shop of Horrors, possibly. It was just not a pleasant experience.
Or what was the movie with Dustin Hoffman where he's being tortured with the dental thing? Marathon Man. Marathon Man. How is that for movie trivia? That's movie trivia for old people.
Wow.
If you're playing at home.
Going way back. Way back.
So while our production staff member is having a Marathon Man experience, hopefully it's better than that. John and I are here this week. A couple of quick announcements to get started on this first episode of Enterprise Security Weekly this year in 2018. If you work in IT and have access to an awesome library and want access to an awesome library of on-demand trading, head over to itpro.tv/securityweekly. They're now accepting requests for demos of the IT team solution that allows you and your coworkers to access over 3,300 hours of training anytime on your mobile device, in the comfort of your living room, at work. You can just access all of this great information, and your company can buy a subscription to all of this wonderful stuff, which is great. So make sure you go to itpro.tv/securityweekly and request a demo of their IT team solution today. Also, check out our on-demand material. We're still working on posting a pen testing one. John and I recorded the pen testing one in December. That will be up on our
right
on
before
demand.
Vacation.
Yeah, we got that in, and it will be posted soon. John and I talked about the state of penetration testing, which was awesome. There's also 4 other webcasts available on demand, which you can go to and register for. You can find webcasts from Cybereason, Onapsis, Signal Sciences, and StealthBits. There's a lot of great information in there. John does a lot of our webcasts too. With StealthBits, we talked about doing file system analysis by hand. We talked with Onapsis about securing business-critical applications such as Oracle and SAP, and basically how a lot of these vulnerabilities come to be, and details about some of those vulnerabilities. It's awesome stuff. Make sure you go check it out, securityweekly.com/on-demand. And now we're going to talk about enterprise security news, John. And we're going to start off with 3 innovative product approaches to network security. It was kind of interesting, funny, that I saw this story twice, this news article, 3 times actually, and each of the security vendors mentioned in this article posted it to their website because they were so happy to be mentioned. And they're probably going to be happy somewhere. They were mentioned, like, wow, someone noticed us. We're going to notice them as well. These are actually 3 vendors I've already noticed that largely I've heard nothing but positive feedback on. John, correct me if I'm wrong as we go through them. Some of these I've actually all 3, at least 2 out of the 3 recently I've taken a briefing with at some point. Great Horn probably most recently, addressing the email phishing problem. And John, this is very similar to Logarithm's solution for phishing. Great Horn is just an entire company basically dedicated to that level of email phishing protection, discovery, and eradication. So if you're Office 365, you can go in, remove those email messages, have an advanced level of protection against email phishing attacks, which, what would you say the percentage of your pen tests that use email phishing to get in and percentage that are successful? It's probably like 70% for the first one and 100% for the success rate.
Yeah. Yep. And Great Horn is a product that we haven't seen kind of kick up in the enterprise space quite as much as we'd like to. And by the way, just so you guys know, we're talking about Great Horn. One of the things that Paul and I like to see is we like to see lots of competition, because we have lots of vendors that are in a specific space. They're all kind of competing with each other. We tend to get better products over time. Great Horn is interesting because a lot of the gateways out there for email, they're very basic and they're fairly easy to bypass. I would say right now in the space, when you're looking at Great Horn, probably the biggest competitor that Great Horn has that they have to overcome is Mimecast. Mimecast has a lot of really good security protections, and it's a lot more difficult to bypass than a lot of the other products that are out there. So if we're talking David and Goliath, then definitely Mimecast is more Goliath in this area right now. And Great Horn's kind of coming up. But they seem to be doing a lot more analysis.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I find, and I don't know if you find this consulting with the enterprise companies that we consult with, that there's a lot of ripping and replacing going on. It's almost like kind of similar to traditional antivirus versus newer endpoint detection and response, whereas they're looking at these older products going, yeah, that was great 5 or 10 years ago, but I'm really not happy with it today, and I want to rip and replace it. And I think your rip and replace costs are probably much less than touching every endpoint in your environment. So there's a lot of ripping and replacing that I'm hearing from enterprises today.
And I think that creates a lot of churn in the enterprise space. So like we can look at something like Ironport being out on the market right now, and there'll be a lot of people ripping that out and replacing it with something like Mimecast, not Great Horn so much yet. But I think that kind of your point is it's easy to rip out these products and replace them. It's not like Endpoint, like you're going to replace McAfee across your entire environment. That's huge.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of attacks that happen. They come in through email, and you're going to blame your email gateway for allowing that attack to come through. And of course, the other vendor is going to come in and say, we would have caught that. We're always going to lie about those types of things. But here's the kick in the teeth. We really don't see that much of an improvement between one vendor to another vendor. A lot of this, in my opinion, is ultimately it's just commodity. I see a lot of them are improving. Mimecast is a lot more difficult to get past than some of the traditional products that are out there, but even those traditional products are improving quite a bit. So it's easy to rip and replace. So I think that it's a good marketplace if you're selling the products, kind of defeat another vendor in this space, put your product in its place, but also you can be knocked off that hill very easily as well.
Guardicore is interesting, and I think I haven't taken a briefing with them in probably maybe 2 years or a year, at least a year. So I haven't caught up with what they're doing recently. They say it's moving from layer 7 protection, which can be activated anytime by deploying agents onto every virtual machine container and bare metal hypervisor. They really embraced the securities embedded into the virtual layer, serving virtual machines, containers, and hypervisors. Exactly what problem they're solving and how. I'm still a little unclear of today, as they added container support. We didn't talk about containers when I did the briefing with them, so I'm curious to hear more, and it's interesting that they're on this list with vendors that largely I hear positive things about.
Well, in Guardicore, that whole, the kind of micro-segmentation, I do wonder how their container security strategy is going to be moving forward. I know that they support Kubernetes, they support OpenStack, and Amazon as well, but I'm really wondering exactly just how crowded this entire market space is going to get in 2018. We've been talking a lot about containerized security, micro-segmentation, of course, is part of that. And it seems like every week, Paul, there's 3 vendors that are in the space that we maybe haven't talked very much about at all. So it's very hard to differentiate. And I think it goes back to what you said. What is the core problem that you're trying to solve? And I think the vendor that can actually articulate that problem and articulate how the solution solves that problem the cleanest is going to do the best.
Red Seal is
regardless of how good their technology is.
This is true. It's true. A lot of it comes down to messaging and marketing and sales. Or messaging and marketing rather. So with Red Seal,
yep.
They're kind of interesting. They've made a transition from being more of a firewall management style company into, I think, getting into that realm of a safe breach, a GRIM, where they're basically identifying that attack path in your network and doing that. They do it on more of an analysis side rather from an attack side. But it's kind of interesting. I think of them as attack path analysis, is what we used to reference it at Tenable, which is where they came on my radar as a company to look into to see what was unique about their technology. I think they've been doing a good job. They're still around and mentioned in this article, and I'm still hearing positive things from customers of Red Seal. So.
Yep. I also like the little blurb here. Red Seal today is a digital resilience platform designed to discover all network vulnerabilities, including those that go around firewalls and map attack vectors so they can be fixed. Interesting.
It's interesting. I'd be curious if you ever had a customer, John, and you did a pen test and they had Red Seal.
Never came up. Never did.
Interesting.
Oh, crap. One go back as a quick note for Guardicore. They do have active deception, cyber deception technologies built into their product as well. So that's kind of neat too.
Awesome. So we have to talk about this healthcare story. I added it so we could talk about healthcare security. And then I was reading the article and I came across this blurb that says it's basically a write-up of the NHISAC biannual summit, from what I understand.
It's their cyber rodeo.
Their cyber rodeo
summit.
Was it held in South Dakota or North Dakota or somewhere like that?
No, it was held in Scottsdale, Arizona.
There you go. The keynote was delivered by none other than Dr. Zubin Damania. Now, some of you may not recognize the name because he goes by his alias, Z-Dog MD. He is a physician turned hip-hop rapper who puts his message to music with an entertaining medley of songs coupled with observations about the changing landscape of patient care, known as Healthcare 3.0. If we could hit, and the article says, and I think it's interesting, if we could hitch our security programs to the high energy level that Dr. Damania demonstrated, we'd have a huge head start in 2018. So maybe what we need is a security wrapper. Like
we dual core.
We have that. It's dual
core. Yeah. So this just looks like it's fun. I mean,
it is.
I'd like to rip on a conference for having kind of a Western theme with bringing in a rapper in that industry, but I think that would be a bit hypocritical of me to do so.
Yep, probably.
But no, it looked like it was a good event. But I think it's interesting that these types of events, generally, they didn't talk much about these general events like healthcare. They don't talk about computer security all that often. It's very interesting that it looks like the idea of security is front and center at this group. Now, you have a lot more experience, Paul, in the healthcare sector, and Larry, of course, has a tremendous amount as well. Do you think that the healthcare sector has finally kind of turned a corner and is now giving security kind of what its due is and actually taking it seriously, or is this just more lip service?
I think it's probably on a slight uptick. I think it's still kind of a hot topic. I think it's to the point now where it's being recognized by leaders in the healthcare space. I don't think we have a lot of really good solutions, both practical and process-wise, in addition to technology that's aiming at helping healthcare. I think we'll probably see those in the coming years, but I think it is being recognized where that was a huge step to get to that point, where it's actually recognized as something that healthcare organizations have to pay attention to. What I also found was interesting is before the show, John was researching ZDoggMD, and I said, please tell me he has a gold-plated stethoscope. I mean, because like, if you're a doctor turned rapper, you gotta have a gold-plated stethoscope.
Gotta have one.
And I think he does.
Yeah, I think he does. In one of the screenshots, it definitely looks like he has a gold-plated stethoscope.
Yeah, I mean, that's just
and also this ties into something we're gonna talk about a little bit later in the show, talking about Internet of Things security, which is something that we really, really hate to talk about because it's constantly up to the point where it's just white noise in the background. Yeah. Whenever you talk about an industry that is genuinely impacted by Internet of Things security threats, it's healthcare. And we're going to talk a little bit later about some of the things that are coming out. And a lot of the devices that are used in healthcare that they roll into your room and hook you up to, those things don't get replaced, patched, updated in some situations for like 5 to 10 years. And that's a problem that just continues to get worse over time.
A great article that summed up the DevOps kind of stuff nicely. And I like the way they frame this as kind of just a reminder. The title of the article is Fewer Gates and More Guardrails. They call it DevSecOps, which I don't like that term. Lessons learned in 2017. And, it describes gates in the traditional waterfall design, right? You go into a phase where everything has to stop. We have to do scanning and testing, and then we have to come back and we have to validate all of the findings, and how developers just hated all of that, basically ignored it and didn't do it. And then they talk about guardrails and automating this process and actually getting it into developers' hands and going into that rapid feedback loop, but it's still kind of like micro gates, right? Like if you say, okay, so we're not going to stop development and do a scan, we're going to give you a tool that analyzes your source code and tells you about it as you develop. That's still mini gates in my opinion in the process. And I think that's why DevOps is so important, is that we can integrate that into the flow. It's still mini gates, but they are much more able to deal with that as part of their process. It's hard to describe. So we created a whole show basically on application security. It's called Application Security Weekly. It'll be debuting this Friday. Keith Hoodlet, you know Keith Hoodlet?
Ooh. Yes.
Keith Hoodlet is the star of that show. I'm going to show up and just ask stupid questions.
Fantastic.
Keith is the brains behind that operation, and we'll be doing Application Security Weekly with us, so make sure you check that out. That'll be dropping into your feeds coming very soon. I added this next one because I wanted people to know Swimlane has announced interoperability with RSA's Archer, which is popular, of course, GRC platform. But the message in here I thought was kind of funny. RSA Archer Suite works swimmingly with Swimlane.
With Swimlane.
As the pairing promises improved visibility and control to ensure compliance demands are met. And again, this is something I'm going to be harping on this year, John, is we use this willy-nilly term visibility all over the place, and I don't actually know what it means. It's provocative, perhaps, but I still don't know what it means.
I think visibility, especially whenever you're talking about GRC, is that we have a tragic collision between two vehicles, and these buzzwords fell on the street. I know of no one at all that uses Archer, and they're like, I love that tool. Yeah. I just don't. And it could be just the nature of the work in GRC and how it's not sexy, it's not fun. I would say it's necessary. And it's highly complicated whenever you're doing compliance and you're trying to basically manage that across an entire organization. But yeah, Archer is an incredible pain in the ass to work with. So
what I think is interesting is that the CTO for McAfee has sounded a warning about AI and machine learning, saying that a formal release that adversaries will be using these technologies for nefarious practices. Are we seeing that today? God. Are we seeing attackers using these techniques? Is this something we need to pay attention to, John?
I just okay. Oh God. All right. So this is they might be using some algorithms. Like for example, Javelin Networks. Javelin Networks does some cyber deception things where they'll take a look at how you name your machines and how you name your user accounts and automatically create accounts and additional machine names for cyber deception purposes using your same naming conventions. That's technically an artificial intelligence algorithm. You're going to see additional malware specimens out there like Ebola, which can actually use kind of context-specific payloads in Golang to generate malware so it actually modifies itself to run on just a specific system and learning what that system is doing. So it's more or less integrated to just that system. And if you take that executable, it won't run on anything else. Yes, we're going to continue to see that type of automated adaptation, but this isn't anything that's new. Mm-hmm. This is stuff that has been talked about and malware has been doing. Basically, self-mutating malware has been around for a very, very long time. Now, where artificial intelligence could be used is post-exploitation and actually going through thousands of folders and potentially hundreds of thousands of files to actually pull out what is interesting for the attacker. I would see that as being something that I would watch out for. But to be blunt, this isn't really like a huge evolutionary jump in the attack methodology of attackers. It's the same crap that they've been doing for the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I agree. Twistlock is in the news, and I like Twistlock. I like the strategies from these different container security companies. There's like 3 of them that are out there, largely startups trying to make their mark in the market. I like that this category has emerged. I think it's going to be a growing category. They all have a slightly different approach on the problem. Mm-hmm. However, it goes back to our issue where the press releases that are released aren't helpful to us in understanding the problem they solve and the solution they have and why it's better or different. And so Twistlock talks about improved cloud-native app firewalls, per-layer vulnerability analysis functionality, application-aware system call defense, and new serverless security capabilities. And all of that really,
that's good.
It doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know about you, John, but I can't
dude, there's no servers involved. If there's no servers involved, Paul, we know that crap's secure because it ain't running. I don't know. We see. Okay, Twistlock is definitely one of those vendors we ripped on very heavily whenever we first saw some of their marketing propaganda. But over time, we've seen their website and some of their messaging change and get a little bit more focused. And we do like the product. I think it's kind of neat what they're doing insofar as like trying to put some type of security around different containers and specifically in Docker. Now, this particular post, I have no idea what the hell serverless support means. Mm-hmm. Did you? I read it once. Did you actually get what serverless support actually means? Like, there's no server involved at all.
Nope.
Anywhere.
Nope.
Okay.
Didn't get it. Okay. I did. If you go to episode 48 of Startup Security Weekly, you can hear from one of the companies in the space, StackRox, Ali Golshan. Came on the show and talked about their approach. Very, very smart individual, awesome conversation. Twistlock is one of those players, as well as Layered. Anyway, they all have a slightly. Matt Alderman is the expert in this. Has followed this space very, very closely, and has come on in several episodes ago and talked about it. And I think it's interesting. I wish that again, all the companies in this space do a great job at messaging, because I think it's all technology that we're going to be adopting, especially enterprises as we move to containers and microservices.
Yeah. Now, all joking aside, whenever Twistlock is talking about serverless security, just kind of talk about it. They still have a server. They're still using servers. They're still monitoring services. But you have a lot of things like Lambda that do not really have a server, but it's basically a service that you're calling upon. So that's what they're talking about, is actually integrating at that level of security. And so instead of a solid Docker app, you can use and actually implement security on something like Lambda. So all joking aside, but this is one of those things, if you're reading this particular article, you got to read all the way down to the bottom to actually figure out what the hell they're talking about, which is just a bad approach.
Yeah, don't make it so hard for us to figure out what you're talking about. Because like security and Lambda, which you just talked about, that's awesome.
Yeah, just basically say, hey, we now support technologies like Lambda. All right, good to go. Awesome, awesome.
We get that, except if you don't really know what Lambda is and you're still learning that stuff, which I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like that. You have to read the way they wrote it, which still doesn't give you any information about what it does. In any case,
good.
So with that, we can take a short break. We're going to come back, talk about patching Intel vulnerabilities. There's a new Intel bug that I got, someone tweeted at me. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about some of the challenges in patching these vulnerabilities in Intel Management Engine and inside of the chip, and segue into some IoT discussions as well. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.